Hey guys, these are your notes about scatter plots and trend lines. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this a step further about what we have been doing in class about predicting the association of a positive, negative, and no association. What we're going to put in is something called a trend line or a line of best fit, or I also like to call them a good prediction line. And what it does, it shows us a linear, in this case, it's going to show us a linear relationship, which a linear means a line, so that we can be able to see a trend of our overall data that we have, so that we can be able to see a general pattern of what we have. Because sometimes it's a little harder to see what type of association a certain type of scatter plot will be, and it can also, we can use this trend line to help us make predictions by seeing and estimating where a point may end up by based off drawing our trend line. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this to help us find a general pattern. Now, how do you draw a trend line is very simple. What we want to do here is we want to draw a straight line that should lie as close to as possible to the points of the data. And basically a good rule of thumb for these is it should go about half points on top and then half on the bottom when you draw your trend line. So when we draw our trend line through the trend, through our scatter plot, it should follow the same type of association. It should be positive if it's a positive one. It should be negative if it's a negative one. And it should lie about halfway through so it's close, or so that the points hug the line on there. So let's take a look at 4 examples here and see which ones of these are good trend lines or not. If you look at number 1, you can see that our scatter plot here has a positive relationship. It has a positive relationship for us. But when we look at our trend line, which is this one right here, our linear line going through here, you can see that it is negative. So our trend line is negative. So this is not a good trend line. This is not a good trend line here. It is not following the same trend of our graph here. Our graph should be going positively, so we should have a trend line flowing through the middle of those points going in the same direction. So that would not be a very good example. The second one here, we take a look, as we can see our scatter plot, it's flowing down negatively. And we look at our trend line, and we see that it's also flowing down negatively as well, so it's following the trend of the scatter plot. But the next thing we have to look at is it hugging or is it going through the middle of all those points? Is it a good representation of being as close to all those points that we can see? And if you see that it is, it's a very good one. So this is a yes, because it lies close to the points of the scatter plot. So this is a very good trend line here. This trend line is flowing through the middle of these points, and so it hugs, so those points are hugging that trend line. So it is a very good trend line because it's going through most, or if not, up pretty close to all of those points on our scatter point. Number 3, we can follow this one. Our scatter plot here is showing a negative trend. It's flowing downward. Our trend line is also in a negative sense. So far that is good, but we've got to look at it. Is it going through halfway of those points? Is it close to most of those points? And by looking at this, you can see that no, this is not. You have a trend line that is above most of the data. So this would not be a very good trend line because it's laying above the trend, above our data, and it would not be a good trend line there on that one. Okay. Number 4 is the same type of key here we got to look at. We have a scatter plot that's in positive. We have our trend line that's also positive, so that's plus, so we know that we have that okay. But we've got to look to see, is that trend line splitting that data in half, or is it kind of just only close to the bottom parts? Close inspection here shows that this is not a very good trend line. Most of the data here is above, or it is below most of our data here. So this is no. Most of the data is above our trend line. Remember, we want our trend line to run through the middle of our data set. So a good representation of a trend line here would be like that. Or a good representation for number 3 would be like so. The red line there that we have. Those first lines that they give to us are line above and below, and it doesn't split our data into half, so it's not a very good representation. So we had a good representation in number 2. Number 1 is not, because it's not following the same trend as our scatter plot. Number 3, number 4, it's not close to all the points that are on there. So that's kind of like how you get to draw a trend line. That should be the easy part. So now we have to go in, we want to look at, well, what happens if we want to be able to tell and give a name to that trend line? Write the equation of these trend lines. And so what we have to remember about is we've got to be able to find what is called our slope. And to write our slope, remember, we just need to have any 2 points because it tells me the rise and the run of my trend line. And we are going to call, remember, we call that M. So M stands for slope that we need to find. So that's the first thing we need to find is 2 points that are on the trend line. Not on the scatter plot, but that are on the trend line. Then we could be able to find our slope for that. After we find our slope, we need to find what is called the y-intercept. Or you might have heard me call that, it's the start point of our line. Where does the line cross our y-axis? And we call that the B. Okay, so we have our 2 points for us. We have our slope, and we have our start point, the B. So remember, we need to write these in slope-intercept form, and when we write these in slope-intercept form, we write it with our slope, with the x value, and our B, which is our start at the end. So this right here is our slope, and this is our y-intercept. We find those information and we can put it together in our slope-intercept form. And that will give me the name of our trend line. And we can use that to be able to make predictions or whatever that we need to later. So let's try some of these here and see what's happening. So here's our first one that we have, our first line. This is a good trend line because it's following the trend of our data. It's going through the middle of our points there. It's kind of close to most of our points, so we can be able to write the name or the equation for this trend line. So what we need to do first is we need to find our starting point, which is our B. Where is it on our y-intercept? Where does it cross our y-axis? And here's our y right there. Well, I notice right here that it crosses at 8. So my y-intercept is at 8. Now, my last piece of information I need to find is my slope. And remember, slope is your rise over your run. And you need 2 points that are on the trend line. So I have a point right here that's already on the trend line. And I just scoot down through here and look, I find me another point that's on the trend line right there. Now all I have to do is calculate, well, how much did I have to rise and how much did I have to run to go from this point here to this point there. So I'm at 8 to do my rise. This is negative, so I have to go down. So I'm going down 1. That gives me a rise of -1. And it gives me a run of 1, 2, 3. So I went down 1 and ran 3. So I have a slope of -1/3. Remember, it's negative because this is a negative correlation and a negative line. Now I can just put it all together, and I have my y is equal to my slope, which I found was -1/3 x, plus my y-intercept, which is b, that I found to be 8. And I have my equation of my line right there. Okay? So that's one down. We'll look at number 6 here. Same types of deal that I have here. Notice I have a positive association. I have a positive trend line running through here that I can see. And I want to know and put a name to this positive trend line. What would be a positive name for this trend line that I have? Well, remember the two things I need to find are my y-intercept, where it crosses the y-axis. And I can see from the beginning of my trend line, right here's my y, it is crossing at 100. So there's my y-intercept b at 100. Now I need to find my slope. And remember, I find my slope by having 2 points on the trend line. So I can do my rise over my run. So I look here and I find another point. Right there's another point on my trend line where it crosses right there. I know for a fact. I know I have another point right there. You can see where they cross on the corners. I have another point right there as well. I can't use these other black dots because those are not on the trend line. I need to use points that are on the trend line. So now, all I want to do is just use any one of these 2 dots to figure out what my rise and run are. So if I start here, remember it's positive, so I need to go up, and I went from 100 to 125. So I went up from 100 to 125, so that's a rise of 25. And I had a run of 1, 2, so I ran 2, so I have a bottom number in my denominator of 2. And there's my slope. So my equation here is y is going to be equal to 25 over 2x plus my y-intercept, which is b, 100. And there it is. So that is the name of that trend line, and I can use those later on that we will see by making predictions and estimations about what to do about this scatter point. We have a third example here on number 7. Number 7, we got to use the same thing. This is a negative trend and a negative trend line. So remember, to write my equation, I need to know where is the beginning point for this trend line. Where is the start point? Where is it crossing my y-axis? So it's crossing right here, up there, at 45, right there. So I know I have a y-intercept of 45. My slope, I need 2 points. It tells me right here, 2 points on my trend line so I can do the rise over the run. So if I look here, these dark black points are not on my trend line, so I can't use those. So I just got to follow my trend line and see, oh, there's one point right here that I can have. There's another point right there. There's another point right here where they're crossing those corners. You notice those red dots are on the trend line. Those black dots are not, so I can't use those. But I can use the red dots that I know they're on the line. Now, since this is a negative line, I know that my rise has to go down. So let's see how much I'd have to go down. So this is 45, 40, 35. So from 45 to 35, I went down a total of 10. From 45 to 35 was 10. Now, how many did I run? Or how many did I go to the right? I went 1 unit, you can see. I went from 0 to 1. So that gives me a value of 1 on the bottom. Now I have my slope and my start, and I can now put it together. So I have y is equal to negative 10x, if I want to put over 1, plus 45. All I did was use this equation there again, just fill in the blanks. Or if I wanted to write it out, I could have put this 10x, negative 10x plus 45. Either one of those would work for that. So I have that put there. I can write it as a fraction, or I can just write it as negative 10 if I wanted to. So those are the 2 names for those trend lines. Okay? So use those to help you when you look or working on those. Remember, just finding the rise and the run is what we're doing on those. Okay? If I look at the next ones here on the back, I got number 8. Number 8 is asking here that this student here, Riley, was trying to find the trend line, the equation of this trend line right here. She chose the points 180 and 230. Would that be a correct points to choose to find this equation of the trend line? So if you remember, the 2 points have to be on the trend line. And if I look for the points 180, 180 is right there is that black dot, and 230, which is right here on that black dot, would those be good points that are on this equation or on this trend line to be able to use? Well, if I don't remember, I can flip over and see I need 2 points that are on the trend line. And if I look here, these 2 points are not on the trend line. So these would be not a very good answer. So no, we need 2 points on the trend line to find our slope. These are not on the trend line. Those 2 points are not, so I can't use those 2 points. But I can find some, and I can write my equation. That's what it's asking us to do. So if I find some here, let's see what happens. So remember, I need to know the beginning point, or my B, the y-intercept. Well, where does this line start at? Starts at 90. There's my y-intercept, the B, starts at 90. Now I just need to find one more point on this trend line, and we notice that these other black dots are not on this trend line. There's one right there, but I don't know what that is. But I know what this point is because it's on the corner. I know what that red dot point is. So I can be able to tell and find my slope. Now remember, this slope is negative, so I got to run down. So how many did I have to go down? I went 90 to 80 and 80 to 70. So 90, that's 10, 20. So I went down 20. And how many did I go over? I went down 20, and I went over 1 unit there. So my slope is negative 20 over 1. And then remember, I write my equation. Y is equal to my slope, negative 20x, plus my start, or my y-intercept, 90. So there would be my equation of my trend line. Okay? Now, number 9 is asking us which one of these are going to be a fit for our trend line if we were to draw a trend line through this line right here. So let's take a look at it here real quick. If I drew a trend line through A, if I drew a trend line through B, C, and D, I want to know which one of those trend lines would match up with this equation right there that I've underlined, 2x plus 5. Let's see what we know and see if we can eliminate some answers. We know that the slope is 2, which is positive. So our trend line has to be positive. There are 2 choices here that I can eliminate because it doesn't have a positive slope. A is negative, so it's out. D is also negative, so it's out. So I know A and D cannot fit in because A and D are negative trends, and I needed to have a positive trend because of what my slope was telling me. Now I need to find out which one of these trend lines looks like to be starting at 5 on my y-axis, so from B and C. If I look at B in my line right there, it looks like it's at 0. C, my trend line through here, if this is 0, that probably could be 5 if I wanted it to be there. So the best choice here, because this one's starting right here in the corner, which we know is 0, and we wanted a start of 5, or a y-intercept of 5. So the best choice there would be C. So C would be my best choice. That it gives me a positive slope and a y-intercept of 5. Okay. Got a couple left here to do down at the bottom. All right, so let's take a look at those. So on number 10 here, we want to be able to take a look at this and answer some questions. So we want to know, what is the slope? So remember, the slope here in our case is what we're wanting to do. So if we take a look here, we got to be able to find 2 points that are on the trend line. And I have a point right here that's on the trend line, and I have a point right there that's on the trend line. I have another point right here. You can see where they are all at. Well, my slope is positive, so let's remember those 2 lines. I need to tell the rise to the run. So I rose from 60 to 70, so that's a rise of 10. And how much did I run? I ran over 1, 5, 10, 15. Notice these are all worth 5. So I went up from 60 to 70 is 10, and then 5, 10, 15. And so I have 10 over 15, which is equal to 2/3. Okay? But what does that 2/3 mean? Remember, the 2/3 is my y value and then my x. Well, what is my y value? Test score. What is the x value? Minutes. So what is it saying? It's saying 2 points for every 3 minutes studied. So that's what my slope is telling me in this case. So I've gained 2 points for every 3 minutes that I studied. Now, what is the y-intercept, or the start of my trend line? Where does it cross the y-axis? Well, if I follow this all the way down to my y-axis, I see that it crosses at 60. So I know my y-intercept is starting at 60. And what does that mean? Well, it's giving me the point 0, 60. And 0 is x. X stands for minutes. So that means 0 minutes studied. You should score a 60% on the test. My x value was minutes. Y value was test score. Now the last part is I just need to put it all together and write my equation. Y equals mx plus b. Here is my m, 2/3. My b is 60. And I have my name of my value there. So we ran through this. Hopefully it will be okay. You'll have a 4-question exit slip that you can use that will be asking you to write trend lines and seeing which ones were graphed correctly. Use your notes to help you. We'll be practicing and reinforcing these 2 as well. Thank you very much.